The clock reads 6 a.m. In exactly 18 hours, the state of Florida will execute Frank Allen Waters by lethal injection. He's been on death row for 28 years, fighting appeals, filing motions, hoping for a stay that never came. Now, with less than 24 hours left to live, Waters sits in his death watch cell at Florida State Prison in Stark, knowing exactly when and how he will die. This is a story of what happens during a condemned man's final 24 hours before execution in Florida, from the moment he wakes up for the last time to the moment the drugs stop his heart. What you're about to see is the reality of America's death penalty, hour by hour, minute by minute, until there's nothing left but silence. Before we walk through these final 24 hours, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We document the darkest true crime stories and prison realities that most people never see. Now let's go inside Frank Waters' last day on earth. Frank Allen Waters, Florida Department of Corrections, number 127854, death row inmate since 1996. He was convicted of the brutal murder of a convenience store clerk during an armed robbery that went wrong. The crime was particularly heinous. Waters shot the clerk twice, then returned to shoot him 3 more times as the man lay dying on the floor. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict him and recommended the death penalty unanimously. Waters was 32 years old when he entered death row. Now he's 60, having spent more than half his life in a 6-by-9-foot cell waiting to die. He's exhausted his appeals. The Florida Supreme Court denied his final petition 3 months ago. The governor denied clemency 2 weeks ago. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his case last week. There are no more legal options. No more delays. No more hope. Tonight at midnight, Florida will carry out its first execution in over a year. Waters will be the 104th person executed in Florida since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. His final day begins with the sound of guards approaching his cell at dawn. Florida State Prison in Stark houses all male death row inmates in Florida, currently over 300 condemned men. The prison sits in rural Bradford County, about 50 miles southwest of Jacksonville, surrounded by nothing but pine forests and farmland. The execution chamber is located in a separate building adjacent to the death row wing, connected by a corridor that condemned inmates walk down during their final minutes. Florida uses a 3-drug lethal injection protocol similar to other states. Etomidate as the anesthetic, rocuronium bromide as the paralytic, and potassium acetate to stop the heart. The entire procedure takes approximately 7 to 12 minutes from first injection to pronouncement of death. Florida has carried out 103 executions since 1976, more than most states, but fewer than Texas, Oklahoma, and Virginia. The state went through a controversial period with an electric chair nicknamed Old Sparky, which malfunctioned spectacularly during several executions in the 1990s, leading to Florida's switch to lethal injection as the primary method in 2000. Waters will die by injection, strapped to a gurney in a small room while witnesses watch through glass windows. But first, he has 24 hours to live through. Waters wakes up in his death watch cell at 6 a.m., though wakes up isn't quite accurate since he barely slept. The death watch cell is different from his regular death row cell. It's located closer to the execution chamber, in a special section with round-the-clock observation. A corrections officer sits outside his cell continuously, watching through a window, recording his every movement on a log. Waters isn't allowed any personal items here. No books except a Bible or Quran if requested. No photographs. No radio. Nothing that could be used for self-harm. The cell contains only a metal bunk, a toilet, a sink, and harsh fluorescent lighting that never fully turns off. Waters sits up on his bunk and stares at the wall. 18 hours left. 18 hours until midnight, until they come for him, until the walk to the chamber, until the needle, until nothing. He thinks about his crime, something he's done every day for 28 years. The man he killed was named David Martinez, a husband and father of 3, working a night shift to support his family. Waters has written letters to the Martinez family over the years, attempting to apologize, to explain, to somehow make amends for the unforgivable. Most letters were returned unopened. One response simply said, "See you in hell." At 7 a.m., breakfast arrives through the slot in Waters' cell door. Powdered eggs, cold toast, a small carton of orange juice. Prison food has never been good, but on execution day, Waters finds he has no appetite at all. His stomach is in knots. Everything tastes like cardboard or worse. He forces down a few bites of toast and drinks the juice, knowing he should eat something, knowing his body needs fuel even if it's about to shut down forever. The observation guard notes in his log, 0700 hours, breakfast delivered. Inmate ate minimal portion. After breakfast, Waters is allowed to shower under supervision. The shower is in his cell, a small stall with a timer that allows 5 minutes of lukewarm water. He stands under the spray and tries to collect his thoughts, tries to prepare himself mentally for what's coming. How do you prepare to die? How do you ready yourself for the moment when they strap you down and poison you while people watch? The water shuts off automatically. Waters dries himself with a thin towel and puts on a fresh set of prison blues. 17 hours left. The morning stretches ahead like an eternity compressed into half a day. At 8 a.m., Chaplain Robert Ellis arrives at Waters' cell. Ellis has been the prison chaplain for 15 years and has walked with 8 condemned men to their executions. He sits outside the observation window with a Bible and asks Waters if he wants to pray, if he wants to talk, if he wants spiritual guidance in these final hours. Waters, who hasn't been particularly religious during his time on death row, finds himself surprisingly receptive. There's something comforting about the chaplain's presence, about the idea that someone cares about the state of his soul, even as the state prepares to end his life. They talk about redemption, about forgiveness, about the possibility of peace in death. Ellis doesn't judge Waters for his crime. He's seen too many men die to waste time on judgment. Instead, he focuses on Waters' soul, on helping him find whatever spiritual comfort might be available in the hours before execution. Waters asks the chaplain the question that's been haunting him. "Do you think God can forgive what I did?" Ellis responds carefully. God's forgiveness is infinite. The real question is whether you've forgiven yourself. Waters sits with that thought after the chaplain leaves. Has he forgiven himself? Can he forgive himself? Or will he die with the weight of David Martinez's death still crushing his conscience? At 9 a.m., Maria Martinez, widow of David Martinez, receives a phone call from the Florida Department of Corrections Victim Services coordinator. The execution is proceeding as scheduled. No stays have been filed. Maria and her adult children are confirmed as witnesses. They should arrive at the prison by 10 p.m. for the midnight execution. Maria has waited 28 years for this moment. Her husband was 36 when he died, shot 5 times by Frank Waters during a robbery that netted $147 and a pack of cigarettes. She was left to raise 3 children alone. Michael, age 8 at the time, Jennifer, age 6, and Daniel, age 4. Michael is now 36, the same age his father was when he died. Jennifer is 34 with children of her own. Daniel is 32 and struggles with addiction issues that started in his teenage years after his father's death. The Martinez family has been fractured by Waters' crime in ways that extend far beyond David's death. Maria has told reporters she needs to witness the execution for closure, though privately she wonders if there's any such thing as closure when your husband was murdered. The pain doesn't end. It just becomes part of who you are. At 10 a.m., Waters' attorney, Sandra Coleman, makes a final call to her client. She's been representing Waters for 12 years, taking over his appeals when his original lawyer retired. She's exhausted every legal avenue. ineffective counsel claims, new evidence arguments, intellectual disability evaluations, challenges to the lethal injection protocol. Every motion has been denied. Every appeal has failed. Now she has to tell Waters something they both already know. There's nothing left. No court will hear them. No judge will grant a stay. The execution will proceed as scheduled. Waters thanks her for trying, for spending 12 years fighting for his life, for treating him like a human being when the legal system treated him like a problem to be solved. Coleman is crying on the phone. She's never gotten used to this, to the finality of watching a client die knowing she couldn't save him. She tells Waters she'll be there tonight if he wants, in the witness room, so he'll see a friendly face. Waters accepts. After the call ends, Waters sits in silence, processing the absolute finality of his situation. 14 hours left. No more appeals. No more hope. Just the slow countdown to midnight and the needle. By 11 a.m., media trucks have gathered outside Florida State Prison. Local news stations, national networks, print reporters, all setting up for coverage of the state's first execution in over a year. Protesters arrive too, anti-death penalty activists holding signs that read state-sponsored murder, and thou shalt not kill. A smaller group of pro-death penalty supporters hold signs reading justice for David Martinez and an eye for an eye. The two groups stay separated by barriers and police, occasionally shouting at each other across the divide. Inside his cell, Waters is unaware of the circus outside. He doesn't know that his execution has become a news story, that people are arguing about his death who never knew him, never knew his victim, never understood the complexity of what led a desperate drug-addicted man to commit murder during a robbery. The death penalty debate reduces everything to simple binaries: pro or anti, justice or murder, victim or perpetrator. But Waters' story, like most death row stories, is more complicated than the signs and slogans suggest. He committed a terrible crime. He deserves punishment. But does he deserve to die? The protesters outside the prison have their answers. Waters, sitting in his cell with 13 hours left to live, has stopped asking the question. At noon, Waters submits his final meal request. Florida limits last meals to $40 and items that can be prepared with ingredients already in the prison kitchen. Some states have eliminated special last meals entirely after inmates ordered elaborate spreads and then refused to eat them. Waters' request is simple and tells a story: a bacon cheeseburger with fries, a chocolate milkshake, and apple pie. It's the meal his mother used to make for his birthday when he was a child, before addiction destroyed his life, before prison, before murder, before death row. It's the taste of a time when he was innocent, when his mother still had hope for him, when life was simple and death was something that happened to other people. The kitchen staff prepares the meal with surprising care. Even in prison, even for condemned men, there's something sacred about a last meal. It's the final small kindness before the state kills you. The burger is cooked medium, the way Waters specified. The fries are hot and crispy. The milkshake is thick and cold. The apple pie is warm with vanilla ice cream. It arrives at his cell at 4 p.m., 8 hours before the execution. Waters looks at the meal and starts crying. It's perfect. It tastes like childhood, like home, like everything he lost when he chose drugs and crime over family and future. He eats slowly, savoring every bite, knowing these are the last flavors he'll ever taste. We're 10 hours from execution now. If you're invested in this story, hit that like button and drop a comment about the death penalty. Should states continue executions? Is this justice or revenge? Let's continue with Waters' final hours. At 2 p.m., Waters is allowed final phone calls with family. His mother passed away 8 years ago, taking with her any hope of reconciliation. His father abandoned the family when Waters was 12 and has never contacted him. His sister, Lisa, is his only remaining family member who maintains contact. She's 45 now, lives in Tampa, has two kids who barely know they have an uncle on death row. The 15-minute call is recorded and monitored. Lisa cries the entire time. She tells Waters she loves him, that she's forgiven him for all the pain he caused the family, that she'll remember the good times before addiction took her brother away. Waters tries to apologize for everything, for the shame he brought the family, for the nephew and niece who grew up with a convicted murderer as an uncle, for dying this way and making her witness it from a distance. Lisa tells him to stop apologizing and just be present with her in these final minutes. They share memories, childhood summers at their grandmother's house, learning to ride bikes, the time Waters defended Lisa from bullies at school. For 15 minutes, Waters isn't a condemned murderer. He's just a brother talking to his sister, pretending that death isn't waiting 10 hours away. When the call ends, Waters hangs up the phone and returns to his cell. He'll never hear his sister's voice again. At 3 p.m., Waters sits with a notepad and pen, writing his final statement. Florida allows condemned inmates to prepare written last words that will be read after the execution. Some inmates use this for apologies. Others proclaim innocence. Some leave spiritual messages or quote scripture. A few use their final words for political statements about the death penalty. Waters writes slowly, crossing out lines, starting over, trying to find words adequate for his last communication with the world. What do you say when you've taken a life, and now your life is being taken? How do you apologize to a family that will never forgive you? How do you explain 28 years of regret compressed into a few paragraphs? Waters writes, "To the Martinez family, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know my death won't bring David back. But I want you to know that I've thought about what I did every single day for 28 years. I wish I could undo it. I wish I could trade my life for his. Since I can't, all I can do is face my punishment with whatever dignity I have left and hope that my death brings you some measure of peace." He continues writing to his sister, to the chaplain, to anyone who might remember him as something more than a murderer. 9 hours left. At 4 p.m., Warden Thomas Mitchell visits Waters's cell to review the execution procedure. Mitchell has overseen 3 executions during his tenure as warden and treats the process with grim professionalism. He explains the timeline to Waters in clinical detail. At 10 p.m., Waters will be moved to a holding cell adjacent to the execution chamber. At 11:45 p.m., witnesses will be brought into the viewing room. At midnight exactly, Waters will be escorted into the chamber and secured to the gurney. The 4 lines will be inserted. The warden will ask if Waters has any final words to speak aloud. Then the drugs will flow. Etomidate first to render him unconscious within seconds. Then rocuronium bromide to paralyze his respiratory system. Finally, potassium acetate to stop his heart. The entire process takes 7 to 12 minutes. The warden asks if Waters understands. Waters nods. He understands perfectly. In 8 hours, the state of Florida will strap him to a table and poison him to death while 15 people watch. The warden leaves. Waters sits in silence, processing the mechanical details of his own death. It's surreal, discussing your execution like it's a dental appointment, a scheduled event, something on a calendar. At 5 p.m., Maria Martinez and her children prepare to drive to Florida State Prison for the midnight execution. They gather in Maria's living room in Jacksonville, the same house where David Martinez lived before his murder. Photos of David are everywhere. Wedding photos, pictures with the kids, his shy smile captured in dozens of moments that ended 28 years ago. Maria has told reporters that witnessing Waters' execution is about closure, but sitting here with her children, she admits she doesn't know what she expects to feel. Relief? Satisfaction? Justice? Or just more emptiness where her husband used to be? Her son Michael, now 36, says he needs to witness the execution for his father's memory. Jennifer, 34, isn't sure she can watch but feels obligated to be there. Daniel, 32, has been in and out of rehab for years and looks exhausted by the whole process. The execution won't fix his addiction or fill the father-shaped hole in his life. They load into Maria's car at 8 p.m. for the drive to Stark. None of them talk much during the 2-hour trip. What is there to say? They're driving to watch a man die, a man who destroyed their family, a man who will finally face the consequences of his actions. But will it be enough? Can any punishment ever be enough when the crime is murder? At 6 p.m., Chaplain Ellis returns for a final pastoral visit. 6 hours until execution. Waters asks if they can pray together. Ellis leads them through the Lord's Prayer, then sits in silence while Waters processes his fear. Waters admits he's terrified of dying, of the moment when consciousness ends, of whatever might come after. Is there a heaven and hell? Will he be judged for his sins? Will he see David Martinez on the other side? Ellis tells him that death is a transition, not an ending, that God's mercy is infinite, that Waters' repentance matters. Waters wants to believe that. He needs to believe that his 28 years of remorse mean something, that he's not the same person who committed murder in 1996, that redemption is possible even for the worst sinners. But he also knows that belief doesn't erase what he did, doesn't bring David Martinez back, doesn't repair the Martinez family. Ellis asks Waters if he's ready. Waters pauses before answering. I don't think you can ever be ready to die, but I've accepted it. I deserve this punishment. If my death brings the Martinez family peace, then at least my death means something. Ellis stays with Waters for another hour, providing comfort and spiritual support. When he leaves, he promises to be present during the execution, to witness Waters' final moments, to ensure he doesn't die completely alone. At 8 p.m., 4 hours remain. Waters lies on his bunk and tries to organize his thoughts, tries to find some way to make sense of his last hours of life. Time moves strangely when you know it's finite. Each minute feels both too fast and too slow. He thinks about his childhood, about moments of happiness before drugs destroyed everything. He thinks about David Martinez, about the man's final moments, about the terror Martinez must have felt when Waters pointed the gun at him. Waters has imagined that scene thousands of times, has tortured himself with it, has wished desperately that he could go back and make different choices. But time only moves forward. Actions have consequences. And in 4 hours, the consequence of his worst action will be his own death. The observation guard changes shifts at 8:30 p.m. The new guard is younger, quiet, treats Waters with professional courtesy, but no warmth. Waters doesn't blame him. Why be kind to a condemned murderer? The guard's job is to ensure Waters doesn't kill himself before the state can kill him. Waters thinks about how absurd that is. They're keeping him alive so they can kill him. At 9 p.m., 3 hours remain. Waters starts counting minutes, then stops. Every minute is one less he'll ever have. Better not to count. At 10 p.m., 2 hours before execution, guards arrive at Waters' cell. It's time to move, the senior guard says quietly. Waters stands. His legs are shaking. The guards place him in handcuffs and leg irons. Standard procedure even though Waters has been completely compliant. They walk him down a short corridor to the holding cell adjacent to the execution chamber. This cell is even smaller than Death Watch, barely 6 feet by 6 feet, with a small bench and nothing else. The walls are painted institutional gray. There's a window looking into the execution chamber, currently covered by a curtain. Waters can see the outline of the gurney through the fabric. That's where he'll die. That table, those straps, those 4 lines. 2 hours from now, the guards position themselves outside the holding cell. Chaplain Ellis arrives and sits on a stool near the cell door. He doesn't try to make conversation. His presence is enough. Waters sits on the bench and stares at the covered window, knowing what's behind it, knowing he'll be lying on that gurney in 2 hours. His heart is racing. His hands are sweating. This is real. This is actually happening. In 2 hours, he'll be dead. At 11 p.m., 1 hour before execution, witnesses begin arriving at the prison. The Martinez family is escorted to one viewing room. Maria, Michael, Jennifer, and Daniel, along with a victim advocate counselor. They sit in chairs facing the execution chamber window, currently covered by a curtain that will open when the execution begins. In a separate viewing room, 5 media witnesses take their seats. Reporters from local and national outlets who will document the execution and report on it. A third viewing room holds official witnesses, prison administrators, law enforcement representatives, and Sandra Coleman, Waters' attorney, who sits alone with tears already streaming down her face. Chaplain Ellis is with Waters in the holding cell. In the execution chamber, the execution team makes final preparations. The gurney is checked. The 4 equipment is tested. The phone line to the governor's office is confirmed operational in case a last-minute stay arrives. The 3 drugs are measured and loaded: etomidate, rocuronium bromide, potassium acetate. Everything is ready. At 11:45 p.m., witnesses are told to turn off all phones and electronic devices. They are instructed not to speak or react demonstratively during the execution. They are reminded they are witnesses to a legal proceeding carried out by the state of Florida. The curtain remains closed. Behind it, in the holding cell, Waters sits with Chaplain Ellis and counts down his final minutes. At 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes before midnight, guards open the holding cell door. Frank Waters, it's time, the warden says quietly. Waters stands. His legs barely support him. The chaplain walks beside him as guards escort him the 15 feet from holding cell to execution chamber. Waters enters the room he's been dreading for 28 years. The gurney dominates the small space. The 4 stands wait on both sides. The one-way mirror behind him hides the execution team. The 3 witness room windows are still covered by curtains. Waters is guided to the gurney. The tie-down team works quickly. Chest strap, waist strap, arm straps, leg straps. His arms are extended on boards in a crucifixion position. The straps are tight but not painful. He can barely move. A medical technician enters from a side door. 2 catheters are inserted, one in each arm, primary and backup. The needles sting going in. Saline solution begins flowing through the lines to keep them open. The technician leaves. Warden Mitchell enters. Frank Waters, you have been sentenced to death by the state of Florida for the murder of David Martinez. The sentence will now be carried out. Before we proceed, do you wish to make a final statement? The curtains covering the witness room windows open. Waters sees the Martinez family. He sees his attorney crying. He sees the reporters with notebooks. He takes a breath and speaks his final words. Waters' voice is barely above a whisper, but the microphone catches every word. Maria Martinez, Michael, Jennifer, Daniel, I see you there. I want you to know that I'm deeply, profoundly sorry for what I did to your family. I took David from you. I destroyed your lives. No apology can ever be enough, but I hope my death brings you some measure of peace. I hope you can find a way to heal. He pauses, fighting tears. To my sister Lisa, I love you. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused. Another pause. To Chaplain Ellis, thank you for helping me find peace with God. To Sandra Coleman, thank you for fighting for me, even when there was no hope. And to everyone watching, I want you to know that I'm not the same person who committed that crime 28 years ago. I found redemption too late, but I found it. I'm ready to face whatever comes next. He takes a final breath. I'm ready. The warden nods to the execution team behind the mirror. At 12:02 a.m., the first drug begins flowing. Etomidate. Waters' eyes flutter and close within 10 seconds. He appears to simply fall asleep. At 12:04 a.m., the second drug flows. Rocuronium bromide. Waters' chest stops moving. He's no longer breathing. At 12:06 a.m., the third drug flows. Potassium acetate. Waters' heart slows, then stops. The prison physician enters with a stethoscope. He checks for heartbeat, checks for breathing, checks pupil response. At 12:09 a.m., he makes the official pronouncement, "I declare this inmate deceased." Frank Allen Waters is dead. The curtains close on the witness room windows. The Martinez family sits in stunned silence. Did they feel closure? Justice? Relief? Maria Martinez later tells reporters she felt empty. Her husband is still gone. Waters' death doesn't bring him back. It just adds another death to the original death. But it's done. After 28 years, it's finally done. The witnesses are escorted out in 3 separate groups to avoid any confrontations. Maria Martinez and her children leave through a side door. They're silent, processing what they just witnessed. Jennifer is crying. Michael's face is stone. Daniel looks sick. Their victim advocate asks if they want to speak with counselors. Maria shakes her head. She just wants to go home. The media witnesses are taken to a press briefing room where they'll pool their notes and file stories about the execution. The reporters describe Waters' final words, the procedure, the time of death. One reporter notes that the execution appeared peaceful and without incident. Sandra Coleman, Waters' attorney, leaves alone through a back entrance. She's represented condemned clients before, but it never gets easier. She wonders if she could have done something different, filed a different motion, argued a different theory. But she knows the answer, no. Waters was always going to die. The legal system ground toward this inevitable conclusion for 28 years. In the execution chamber, the team removes Waters' body from the gurney. He'll be taken to the prison morgue, then released to his sister for burial. The gurney is cleaned. The floor equipment is stored. The room is prepared for the next execution, scheduled in 6 months. The machinery of death in Florida pauses, but never stops. In the car driving back to Jacksonville, the Martinez family sits in heavy silence. Maria stares out the window at the dark Florida highway. Michael drives with both hands gripping the wheel. Jennifer stares at her phone without seeing it. Daniel's eyes are closed. Whether sleeping or just avoiding reality, no one knows. After an hour, Maria speaks. "I thought I'd feel different," she says quietly. "I thought watching him die would change something. But David's still gone. The kids still grew up without a father. 28 years are still lost. Waters' death doesn't fix any of that." Michael responds, "But he paid for what he did. Justice was served." Maria nods slowly, but her expression suggests she's not sure justice and revenge are the same thing, or if either one brings actual healing. They arrive home at 3 a.m. Michael and Jennifer hug their mother and leave. Daniel stays the night, collapsing on the couch where he fell asleep as a child waiting for a father who would never come home. Maria sits in her bedroom looking at old photos of David and realizes that closure is a myth. The pain doesn't end when the person who caused it dies. It just becomes part of the landscape of your life, something you carry forever. Waters' execution didn't give her husband back. It didn't heal her family. It was just another ending in a story full of tragic endings. She sets the photo down and tries to sleep, wondering if she'll dream of David or of Waters dying, and which would be worse. By morning, news of Waters' execution has spread across media outlets. Headlines read, "Florida executes convicted murderer after 28 years on death row," and first Florida execution in over a year carried out without incident. The stories quote Waters' final words, describe the Martinez family's attendance, note the anti-death penalty protests outside the prison. Social media erupts with the usual divided reactions. Pro-death penalty commenters write things like "good riddance" and "justice for David Martinez." Anti-death penalty activists respond with "state-sponsored murder" And this doesn't bring the victim back. Some people debate whether 28 years on death row constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. Others argue about the cost of executions versus life imprisonment. A few discuss Waters' statement of remorse and whether redemption is possible for murderers. The debate rages for 24 hours before the news cycle moves on to the next story. Frank Waters becomes another statistic. Execution number 104 in Florida, number 1,598 in the United States since 1976. David Martinez remains a victim, his death justified as the reason Waters had to die. Maria Martinez remains a widow, no more at peace after the execution than before. And the death penalty machinery in Florida resets, preparing for the next condemned inmate, the next execution, the next family seeking justice or closure or revenge or whatever it is that watching someone die is supposed to provide. Frank Waters' execution raises the questions that every execution raises. Does the death penalty deter crime? Studies suggest it doesn't. Does it bring closure to victims' families? Some families report feeling empty after executions, discovering that revenge doesn't heal grief. Does it serve justice? That depends on your definition of justice. Is it retribution, deterrence, or something else entirely? Does it risk executing innocent people? Yes, with over 190 death row exonerations since 1973. Is it applied fairly? No, with clear racial and economic disparities in who receives death sentences. Does it cost more than life imprisonment? Yes, due to mandatory appeals and lengthy legal processes. Waters spent his final 24 hours knowing exactly when he would die. The Martinez family spent 28 years waiting for that moment. Both suffered. Both carried the weight of murder. Waters as perpetrator, the Martinez family as survivors. Waters' execution ended his suffering, but didn't necessarily end theirs. That's the complicated truth about the death penalty. It answers violence with violence, death with death, and leaves everyone involved wondering if there might have been a better way. Frank Allen Waters is gone. David Martinez has been gone for 28 years. 2 men dead, 2 families destroyed, and the debate continues about whether any of it actually served justice or simply perpetuated tragedy. That's the reality of Florida's death penalty, hour by hour through the final 24 hours before execution. If this story impacted you, subscribe for more death row documentaries from across America. Drop a comment. Should the death penalty still exist? Did Waters' execution serve justice? Should there be a time limit on how long inmates stay on death row? Check out our other death row videos from Texas, San Quentin, and Angola. Thanks for watching.